U.S. Congressman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin, the chairman of the Budget Committee, says his Republican budget was influenced by his Catholic faith. Well, today it was clear not everyone agrees with him. Ahead of a speech at Georgetown University today, he was met with protesters, and a letter from nearly 100 professors and staffers disagree with his philosophy and his budget. That letter says, in part, we would be remiss in our duty to you and our students if we did not challenge your continuing misuse of Catholic teaching to defend a budget plan that decimates food programs for struggling families, radically weakens protections for the elderly and sick, and gives more tax breaks to the wealthiest few. James Saul runs the group Catholics United, which protested the congressman's speech today, and Sister Simone Campbell is the executive director of Network. Sister, I want to start with you, and it's an honor to have you on today, as well as to have James on. We've been watching this dispute over Catholic philosophy and the social justice issue. My question to you is a very simple and perhaps a whimsical one. How come nuns tend to be Democrats and bishops tend to be Republicans?
Well, that's a really good question. I'd like to know the answer to it myself, but I have a hunch that it's our experience that makes the difference. We sisters work at the margins of society. We work with people who are struggling, who are working for minimum wage, who have a very tough time with a minimum wage at $7.25, keeping food on the table for their families. So we know the real-life struggles of real-life Americans. And when you're in touch with those sorts of struggles, you can't help but realize that we need to be together as a society and respond to the needs of all around us. We're only as good as the strength of our society, and that's why we think that often democratic principles are much more in keeping with that sense of solidarity.
Let me go to James on this, and I could bring it up with the sister as well. We all grew up, Catholics like myself, studying Rerum Novarum, the encyclical on social justice from the early part of the last century. And we understood the importance of a living wage and things like that, and subsidiarity and all those principles and warnings about the excesses of capitalism. Most Americans, even Catholics, have no idea what I'm talking about, do they? They don't understand that there is this fabric, this safety net that was really introduced by the Catholic Church, and of course then made part of the law and the New Deal.
You know, but it's also part of our DNA. I mean, many Catholics came over to this country with very humble origins, and worked hard, played by the rules, and really proved the American dream true, that you can succeed. Which is why it's so unfortunate right now that at a time when there's so much suffering, Congressman Paul Ryan really wants to beat up on the little guy. So, you know,
why do you think he wants to give tax breaks to the rich? I can understand why he worries about the burden of debt down the road to future generations. My kids worry about that, especially my daughter. But why does he feel that there needs to be incentives for the rich? And where does he find his Christianity heading in that direction?
Yeah, well,
helping the rich out.
Certainly indicates his political motivations less than gospel teaching. You know, I, along with the Catholic bishops, agree that Paul Ryan's budget fails a basic moral test. Anytime you ask working-class Americans to pay for the tax breaks of the wealthy, that's not just unfair, that's immoral, that's unchristian. But, you know, it is something that we're all concerned about. I mean, this is something that's central to the Catholic community. We care about the...
Well, let's watch it. Let him speak here. James, here's Congressman Ryan defending his budget this morning at Georgetown. Let's listen to the congressman.
Our budget offers a better path, consistent with the timeless principles of our nation's founding, and frankly, consistent with how I understand my Catholic faith. We put trust in people, not in government. Our budget incorporates subsidiarity by returning power to individuals, to families, and to communities. We draw inspiration from the founders' belief that all people are born with a God-given right to human flourishing.
Sister, why do you think some people believe the way to get poor people to work harder is to cut their money, to basically hurt them, and the way to get the rich people to work harder is to give them more money? Why do they have different views of incentives?
Well, I think they probably don't know people who live in poverty, because people who live in poverty work extremely hard to just even feed their families. What they know is the wealthy, the reserved. They know in this lie about giving wealthy people more money will make better jobs. Wealthy people have had 10 years of a tax cut that has resulted in no jobs. The wealthy people have had 10 years to keep wages flat and claim that it's because of globalization. Wealthy people have had the chance to exploit those who are at the very margins of society, to deny health care to them, to cause them to go into debt or bankruptcy whenever they have a catastrophic illness. And now the Republicans want to promote that. Just because they say, Congressman Ryan said it was his understanding of his faith. I think he has a very flawed understanding of his faith. He is half right about subsidiarity and building responsibility, but because he leaves out solidarity and the fact that we're in this together, the fact that we, the people of the United States, means all of us, not just those with money, that because he leaves that out, he has half right, but he's 100% wrong. He's got his faith
James,
wrong.
I'm sorry, Sister James, there has been a fight. We've covered it here extensively without getting too much into religion here. We've covered the issue over the contraceptive issue, the fights between some of the sisters and some of the bishops, the organized bishops. But it seems like you're both on the same page, the bishops and the nuns, when it comes to this response, with this sort of Dorothy Day approach to the social ministry here and helping poor people. Seems like you're together, are you? The bishops who tend to be Republican, as I said, and the sisters who tend to be Democrats. Do you agree on this social agenda you're talking about here for poor people?
Absolutely, and I want to echo Sister Simone. You know, if Paul Ryan spent a day of his life in the shoes of those in poverty, of soul-crushing poverty, and had to make decisions from day to day, how do we make our paycheck stretch to either put gas in the gas tank or food on the table, we wouldn't be having this debate.
Yeah. Well, I like to remind people who come to Washington, get up early someday and get down to some of the poor parts of Washington, D.C., and notice how the poor people, a lot of them African Americans, are up catching the bus at 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning to go to work. They're not coming home rich. They're not coming home rich, but they have put in a full day's work. Here's Congressman Ryan speaking about his Catholic faith this morning, again, at the wonderful, great, actually, Georgetown University. Let's watch.
I suppose that there are some Catholics who, for a long time, thought they had a monopoly of sorts. Not exactly on heaven, but on the social teaching of our church. Of course, there can be differences among faithful Catholics on this. The work I do as a Catholic holding office conforms to the social doctrine as best I can make of it. What I have to say about the social doctrine of the church is from the viewpoint of a Catholic in politics, applying my understanding to the problems of the day.
Well, Sister, what's your last word on the good fight between you and Paul Ryan tonight? Your last lick in.
Paul Ryan needs to read the encyclical by Pope Benedict, Charity and Truth. He needs truth. The truth is that those who suffer at the margins of our society are the ones Jesus cares about. They're the ones our society should care about, and it's the ones that the Republican budget, his budget, leave out. That's wrong. It's morally wrong, and his faith understanding is seriously flawed.
Amen.
Wow, you're really poaching. You're going to Benedict on this one. Anyway, I thought you were going to go to Leo the 13th, but congratulations for finding a liberal doctrine from Pope Benedict VI. Thank you so much, Sister, for joining us. You know your stuff, of course. And James Saul, thank you, sir.